Hello, everyone. We are officially live with Shade Studios. I'm going to be bringing in my team here in a moment. What an incredible January this was. We all went to Sundance Film Festival for 2025 this year. This is our second time as a team going there. We will have Karlo, Siriban with us in spirit. But without further ado, I'm going to bring my team on in. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe right now. But we are going to jump into our thoughts on our top picks for the Sundance Film Festival this year. We all screened in total over 60 plus films, which is pretty crazy to think about. My brain's about to explode, but we'll dive into each of our favorite picks. They're obviously going to be different since we didn't all screen the same exact films, but we'll also talk about our experience at Sundance this year. I know that Steve Ramsey had his first time experience at the film festival, so we'll definitely want to ask him how he felt this year, hopping on board with the rest of us. And without further ado, let me bring everybody in.
Hey, Marissa.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Everyone feel good to be back home. I know we got Steve on the West Coast and the rest of us are holding it down on the East Coast. And Karlo is in acting school right now. So, you know, he's trying to get on the other side of the press line. Oh, I forgot to mention, we did all cover in total, what was it, AJ, like 15 red carpets on top of all of the films we watched?
Close. I think 14, and we had to back out of like another 5 just because
Wow.
there's only 24 hours in a day.
Those 24 hours in a day at Sundance are really compact.
Steve, tell us about your first time at Sundance, though. Steve brought to our attention, by the way, that the wardrobe was a little different than what he thought, as to be expected.
Oh my God, the cold. So everybody was warning me about the cold in Park City, you know, and here it is. Even the people there who like live there were saying, oh yeah, this is unreasonably cold here. I mean, it was like, I don't think it got above freezing for most of the time we were there. The first couple days was like well below 0. And so everybody was warning me, you got to dress in layers, you got to dress in layers. And so I took that advice and it helped. And I wore thermals for the first time, which I'm so glad I did. But I did. It takes a long time to get dressed and a long time to get undressed.
You experienced the first Sundance cold as well. It gotcha.
Oh yeah, you got the Sundance flu. Yeah, the last couple
Yes.
days I was there. Oh my God, it hit me hard. We met another filmmaker there, Afrim. You remember? Well, actually, all of you remember Stacy Chu, and she was complaining like that one night. She's like, "Oh, you know, my throat is beginning to hurt." She had the exact same thing I did. She got back home, and we had the exact parallel 1 week of hell.
Oh, Stacy got it too. Was it in the dumplings?
Yeah, I know, right?
I showed up late to that one, so I avoided it.
I saw you eat a plate of 30 dumplings, Afrim, in like 5 minutes.
Wait, can I just tell you before we continue? Can I tell you my favorite part?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh.
Right?
Where are our hoodies,
Oh, yeah.
Steve? We didn't get the memo to wear the hoodies today.
My hoodie is on my couch in the other room because I'm going to wear it as I go back to my house later on.
My hoodie is still in my suitcase that is yet to be unpacked.
It's a solid
Definitely
hoodie.
got his hoodie framed.
Yeah, no, I should have worn that. This is the West Coast Shade office.
It is, actually, yes. Welcome, everybody, to our Shade Studios office in San Francisco, California. Steve is holding it down on that lovely yellow couch.
Yep. Gold. This is my podcast couch.
You know what's actually kind of funny is Afrim, your backdrop and then Steve's couch intermixed with the painting behind AJ. Are these our colors?
Yellow
we're
and blue
kind of
always
fun.
go
We have a
good
very
together.
consistent color palette.
And look, I've got my press passes here. TIFF and
Oh,
Steve can still get into all of the festivals with his credentials behind him. They aren't expired. All right, guys. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the films that kind of stood out in your mind. I know that we all kind of watched a variety of different films. For everyone who doesn't know the team, we kind of have different focuses, I guess, on genres. Steve primarily focuses on horror. And we just all kind of found out, actually, the dissection of horror films, Steve, which I had no idea was so articulate in the types of horror. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Afrim, you actually dived into a lot of variety of films that are outside your comfort zone this year, which is really fun to get your thoughts on what you saw. And then, AJ, you just kind of consumed I don't know how many films in 2 days, which is pretty incredible. And my brain was about to explode with the amount of films I consumed when we got back from Sundance.
Too many.
Yeah. But I guess maybe we'll kind of go through, I guess, our top 3 picks. And even for me, I know that it was kind of a tie between a couple, so I was kind of finagling between which ones I thought were better than others. And of course, it's going to differentiate because I saw primarily a ton of documentaries, I realized, in comparison to some of the other genres. Actually, Steve, though, I did watch a horror film, which made my list kind of, but I don't think it's going to count as like the type of horror you like. 'Cause you know me, I'm like a horror thriller kind of girl.
Yeah, I like all horror.
But yeah, so let's go through it. What are some of your top picks from the film festival this year?
I think before we start, can I just say, I got to make a baseball joke here because Afrim is here, but to Marissa's point of seeing so many different types of movies, I think, Afrim, you're like the Tanyan Sturts of Sundance Film Critic.
No, nobody but me and you will understand that one.
He's a journeyman. He's a journeyman.
Yeah,
He sees
a
everything.
journeyman relief pitcher for the Yankees. All right, let's get back. Let's get focused here, okay? All right, you know what? If you don't mind, I do have a top 3, but there are 2 that I would just like to mention honorably, if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
So my 2 honorable mentions, I'm not going to go too in depth with them because they're not in the top 3, but they were pretty close. One is called Train Dreams. Sorry, I have to say that one very slowly because I feel like if I say it fast, you don't understand the name. Train Dreams is the name of the movie with the Joel Edgerton. That one was right on the cusp. And also one of the last ones I watched, which was a documentary called The Perfect Neighbor. That one was one of the better ones also, but did not crack the top 3. You guys have any other honorable mentions?
The body cam one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an honorable mention.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so this is one that I wasn't sure if I should put it in my list or not because I saw it with Afrim. It's the only film I think I saw with any of you guys, but we saw Dead Lover. And I remember we walked out of that screening. It was the premiere, and I was like, I don't know, man. It just sort of lost me there. It fell apart. But it was one of these movies that for some reason it just like ate at me, and it was like a mold growing on me. And after, like the next day I woke up and I was still thinking about it. And if I'm still thinking about a movie, there's got to be something to it that sparked something in my brain. And it was clear that this is a movie that was so, I guess you would describe it as an experimental film in a way. It's basically shot in kind of a black box, very low budget, about this woman who stinks. She's a grave digger and she stinks of rotting corpses, and so it's very hard for her to find a lover, but she does find a guy who's very, very much attracted to that scent. So it's a comedy, and it's just one of these films that I think I gotta see it again, and then I'll know for sure. Afrim shaking his head. He's like, nah.
Afrim. Every day Steve would bring up this film and say, it's actually
like,
growing on me. And it's been how many weeks since we got back from Sundance? It's still growing with you.
Right.
Yeah,
I have to see it again. Get it off the plate.
It grows like a virus,
He's that Sundance flu virus.
It's weird. I do have to mention that I've never, like, Steve and I were almost like opposites in terms of our film taste. And I remember when we covered the press line right afterwards, we had tickets to the premiere, and I was so excited. I said to Steve, "This is the first time that you and I are going to actually witness a film together, and we're going to
Okay.
have like right off the bat, you know, what's your first thought?" And it's funny
Yeah.
because in the beginning we actually kind of agreed.
We were both exactly the same. We were on the
Wow.
same
Yeah.
page with that film. Totally.
Yeah. And then, but
What
I
happened,
guess
guys?
something.
What happened?
Yeah, I guess something about it just kind of burrowed its way into Steve. And
Yeah.
Was it the
I've had
corpse?
movies- No.
Was it
you
something
I've
about that
had
corpse?
Movies have done this to me before, where for some reason if I don't think about a movie afterwards, then it's probably my initial thoughts were right. But if I just keep thinking about it and I keep thinking, I think that my problem with that movie, at least on first viewing, was that it was really front loaded, and the second half kind of lost me. And I guess I couldn't really follow what was going on too much. But I don't know.
Maybe your
Yeah.
top film of the year by the end of 2025. Steve.
Yeah, I doubt that.
no.
Afrim's like, please,
would
no.
personally come out here and
Oh yeah, that's it. I'm out of here. Bye. No, but I will say though, because we did get to actually interview the director and some of the stars of the film, they were actually really, really cool people. So
Yeah.
regardless of my opinion of the film, I actually I'm very happy that they got that moment, you know, because the people in the theater were very happy for them. I think everyone was just kind of happy for them in general, you know.
And yeah, and actually that kind of speaks to a larger point
Steve,
about Sundance.
that's the one that you did a fit check.
I did a what?
You did a fit check for the cast.
Oh,
You
that's
pulled a
right.
Marissa Hill.
Because Marissa wasn't there.
You did it for me, Steve. Thank you.
I did it for you. What are you wearing?
That sounds so bad.
Only context where you can ask that question,
Yeah.
What are you wearing?
or even worse, who are you wearing? I guess.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah. Any honorable mentions, guys?
I think I'll mention mine kind of with the films I picked because it will make more
Okay.
sense. Because it was like a toss-up between both, but they're kind of like in the same genre and kind of similar in their own way. What about you, Alfred?
Well, sorry, Alfred, if you don't mind if I interject, because I didn't really mention anything about the films, so I'll just do a super, super brief. Train Dreams, I love the way it looks, and the dialogue, even though there's not that much of it, it's a very slow-paced movie, but the dialogue is so, so sharp that it keeps you interested, even though it might feel kind of like a slower type film. And then The Perfect Neighbor, the body cam stuff, I mean, it kept me really interested the entire time. I was like, man, where's this going? Even though I kind of knew where it was going. It's basically a neighbor dispute, but they kind of use body footage, you know, body cam footage from the police officers over the course of maybe a year and a half. And you kind of know in the beginning what happened, and then they show you all the different encounters that these people had with this one, you know, she called herself the perfect neighbor. And I'm not going to talk any more about it, but it's a pretty powerful movie.
So for honorable mention, I actually have a dead lover of my own, and I didn't think this was the case because I think this was the very last movie that I saw at Sundance, and this was one that Afrim was supposed to see. It's called Obex. And it's like
yeah.
1980s like lo-fi video game. So it's this guy. So the entire thing is black and white. It's shot mostly in his house. They go a little too long into proving that he's a loner that never leaves his house. But there is a gaming element here. Basically, he's looking through like these old computer shopping, PC computing magazines, sees some game studio having some kind of audition. Hey, do you want to be in the game? And of course, he submits an audition tape and he wants to be a part of it. And it's kind of weird because it's set in 1987. And in a weird way, it's kind of foreshadowing what's going to end up happening to video games here in 2025 when everyone looks like themselves and they have like an alter ego and they're all playing Fortnite. But it's pretty cool that it's like an old retro game, but it is weird. It is like super low budget. I mean, maybe like they may have spent $50,000 on this. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know the
super
exact
low.
number, but it
Wow.
feels low budget, but it kind of works to its advantage. It's just weird. And I remember walking out of the theater and I was like, this is terrible. Like, this is atrocious. I'm never going to watch it again. Like, what the heck just happened here? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, there is something about this movie that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that it feels like they spent no money to do it and they were still able to advance some kind of story. Like, some parts of it felt like Lord of the Rings. I know, weird for like a $50,000 movie about 8-bit video games. But I would say that's my honorable mention. There is another film. I have a feeling someone in this live stream is going to mention it, so I'll save that until we get to like our top 3.
Cool. Shall we jump into our top 3? I don't know. I guess we didn't really ask Karlo. Karlo's in spirit, everybody, once again, as he is in acting class right now. But I feel like off of his reviews, maybe third act, I would say is probably Karlo's favorite. Did he give that a 10 out of 10, actually, that documentary?
Yeah, he gave that a 10. Yeah, he gave that a 10. And that press line was crazy. It was like crazy emotional. Like, everyone was crying. I mean...
Tell the story, a little bit of a summary about it, Alfred, and what happened on the
it's
carpet.
Basically, so it's made by someone named Tadashi Nakamura, and it focuses on his father, who's Robert Nakamura, and like a lot of these, if you're a cinephile, if you're really into kind of like movie history, he's kind of regarded as like the godfather of Asian American media and Asian American filmmakers, and his son goes out to try and kind of tell his story, which is why it's called Third Act, because his dad's kind of, he's not really making films. He's retired, and it turns out that he has Parkinson's. And what's crazy about this is, when you're watching the movie, they kind of jump from year to year, and you end up finding out that it's been shot over like a 7-year time period. So it's really like emotionally jarring to see Robert Nakamura's condition as they're kind of shifting from different moments in time. And so we're at the press line, and, mind you, they finished filming this, I think, in 2023, right? So it's been almost 2 years since the latest shot that you'd see in Third Act. And you see him, and it's just like, whoa, like clearly he's deteriorated physically. But at the same time, you're like, man, like he talks in the movie about how he's really trying to get his son kind of into, really into movie making. And he does this for him. And like, you see him there with a wheelchair. He's like not able to speak. And you're like, man, not only has the disease kind of progressed, but like he's really fighting to be here. And there's this moment when Marissa was talking to Tad. Robert was right behind me, and he was staring at our monitor, and like he was just tearing, like watching Marissa interview him. And I'm just like, wow, this is a little too much for me here for a film festival.
It's like a full circle moment to see like generationally how proud he is, and to see like, this is somebody who was in an internment camp. I mean, imagine you're raised on an internment camp, and you came basically from nothing and made something of yourself. And especially in the AAPI community, he's paved the way for so many. But yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking to watch kind of over the years, because it was filmed over a very long time period, and you can tell based on the Tad's son and like how he ages and how long his hair gets by the end of the documentary. And you're like, wow, what has it been, like 10 years? But you kind of see the father deteriorating, and it's just really kind of heartbreaking to see this process of somebody who has done so much, but also interviewing people who were students of his on the carpet, saying like, I was a student, and all of a sudden now I'm here at Sundance, being a part of, a producer, whatever it may be on this film. But yeah, I think it definitely showed through in the documentary itself, like how close knit this team was on the production side of things and really putting this story together and bringing it to life. And also just, I think, inspiring others to be a part of film, you know, who probably think that they have all these things going against them. And, you know, maybe they don't have all the tools and the resources to make something great. And that story just, I think, resonates with a lot of people in so many different ways. But yeah, seeing the father cry was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
All right.
That sounds pretty tough. Now we're gonna change gears.
I know. Well, you know what's funny, and I was talking to a lot of people about this. The thing about Sundance, and I know it's like this every year, but a lot of the films, you don't walk out of the theater, I feel like, happy. A lot of these films are very dark, emotional. You know, like I was having a hard time, honestly, like going through my list. I'm like, was there a film where I was like, man, I feel really good? Yeah, and I don't think I did. I think a lot of it was really, they're tough storylines, you know, and a lot of them are kind of morbid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But doesn't this speak to the nature of Sundance and the effort to showcase independent, small, low-budget films? I think that this is where you can see these movies.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're not going to see Francis Ford Coppola, at least I wouldn't think so, you know, marching down the red carpet at Sundance. But I could be wrong. This is one of my
never
first
know. Now that you say it, that's what's going to happen next year, Steve.
I don't know why he came to mind, just because I guess of the TIFF
from TIFF,
where he was there.
Megalopolis.
Megalopolis, right? Massive red carpet.
Maybe he'll
David Cronenberg, Francis Ford Coppola.
Let's say maybe he'll re-edit it and then just bring it to Sundance and just pretend like the first one never happened.
He's got enough money to do it, so I guess he could.
Yeah. Not anymore. Sorry. All right. Ouch. I know. I'm sorry. I still love The Godfather 1 and 2.
Should we get into our top 3 then?
Yeah.
Starting with number 3.
All right. I guess I'll go first. My number 3. So it's funny when you were mentioning, Marissa, that like it was hard to pick ones that weren't, you know, where you walk out of the theater like crying. Actually, my number 3 and number 2 are kind of, I think, purposely not those, because these were 2 of like the most like regular films that I saw at the festival. You know, like for example, I saw my number 3 is a film called Atropia, which it's not a sequel to Zootopia, and it's also not about muscles getting any smaller. So basically, Atropia is a comedy starring Alia Shawkat, where she basically plays an actress who works in a military camp where they actually, I guess it's a real place in California in the desert, where they actually train American soldiers to kind of be, you know, to see what it's like in a certain village wherever the U.S. may be at the time, you know, and that film takes place, I think, in 2006. So the village is modeled after Iraq. And so the soldiers are there, you know, and there's all these actors playing Iraqi, you know, villagers and stuff. And basically they just go through drills. And so, but it's a funny setup. And her being like this actress who really wants to like break out and be a real star, but she's stuck in this like village. So that's really funny. And also the fact that like it's kind of like a satire on the military, which I was kind of worried, because sometimes I see stuff like that and it bothers me a little bit if they really get at like the individual soldiers. But they kind of deftly weave between like, we're just going to make fun of the actual like, you know, institution and not insult the guys on the ground. And that balance was actually like really cool for me. That one, if it hasn't been picked up, I'm sure it will. And I'm sure within a year, you guys out there will be able to see it. And there's also a monster cameo in the movie that, I mean, nobody in the theater expected. They, you know, in the film, they mentioned that a really big star is going to come to this, you know, set to get like military training. And I was just wondering, sitting there in the theater, like, oh, I wonder if it's like a star in like their world or if it's actually like a star in our world, you know. And it's very, very, very much a star in our world that I did not expect. Like everyone in the theater kind of gasped and then started laughing when they saw this person. I don't want to say who it is in the movie for a brief, you know, point. And I don't know. It's an overall solid, funny movie.
I guess I'll go next.
Okay.
My number 3 film is probably Lurker. So Lurker is a story about obsession and about being a fan. And so there's this pop star who is just as world famous. He's huge, and he has this chance meeting with a guy who's just some guy works at a retail clothing store, and they hit it off. And the pop star says, "Hey, you should come to my show." And the guy working there says, "I don't really know who you are." And so that's sort of like bound them together. The pop star was intrigued that this guy was, you know, willing to see his show, but it turns out that the guy forms this obsession with the pop star and just tries to get more and more embedded into his life, and until there's a breaking point where something really, really bad happens and the tables kind of get turned. So this is one of those films that it's like half of the film is just uncomfortable to watch because so much of it is a reflection on, I don't know, celebrity culture and fan culture and this online obsession people have with celebrity. And it was just a really engaging movie. It was thought-provoking, and I don't know if I could watch it again, but I think it was definitely worth a watch and one of the most memorable movies.
It's a great name.
I don't know if that one's been picked up yet or not, but I would imagine it will be. I want to say it's...
Yeah, it's weird. Like the velocity of transactions this year is much slower. I mean,
Much
last
slower,
year
yeah.
when we were there, like things were getting like picked up like left and
Left
right.
and right.
And here it's like you know, once every few days. You know, like,
do you think
it's
that
much
does that
slower.
speak to the economy or the quality of film?
I think it's well, I think last year had a lot of bangers, right? I mean,
There were a lot of bigger
Pain,
names too, I would say.
Yeah, and there were a lot of bigger names. You know, I think it's partially economics. I think you have a situation where streamers, you know, they're just not as up for spending a ton of money on an indie film as they were last year. You know, like it's just different. But there were a lot of good films last year. There are actually a lot of good films this year. But you know, I guess that's our job, is because we're looking for stuff that's underappreciated that people will appreciate. Case in point, there's a little movie called Kneecap.
That was my pick from last year. That was my pick.
Dude, they're going on tour, and I was gonna they're coming to San Francisco, and I remember you talking about the movie, and so I started listening to their music. I'm like, yeah, I got to see these guys. As soon as the tickets went on sale, I was like 20 minutes late to the, you know how the Ticketmaster, you've got to be like right on the sold out, completely sold out. They were immediately going for like a couple $100. And they're playing it like a real small venue. They could have done a much larger spot, I think.
Yeah, like even in the film, they perform mostly at smaller venues until obviously the very end. But I mean, the thing with that one was like, I mean, we already discussed this in another video, I think, but I had no idea that they were actually a real like hip hop trio. So for me
Really
to like
good.
find that out only during the final credits, where they started showing pictures of them from like, you know, 2019, 2018, 2017. It's like the same guys just getting younger and younger. And you're like, oh my God, wait, this is a real group. And they're playing themselves. And, you know, I don't know, whatever. Let's move on from Kneecap because that was a 2024 movie.
Marissa had something similar too, right? Like she had Sugarcane.
Sugarcane.
No one was talking about Sugarcane. I mean, no one. And there was like no one in the theater. And here we are, Oscar time. In a few weeks,
one of 4 people in the theater. Just throwing it out there.
You're a visionary.
Yeah.
One of those people may have walked out. I don't know if it was for a bathroom break and they just never came back, but I was one of four.
It's
That's
really
right.
it's really satisfying, like picking a movie that you don't hear many people, because a lot of people at home don't know what it's like, obviously. And I mean, really, Steve just learned this year, we just learned last year, what the whole situation's like. And I mean, you have, especially at Sundance, you have a lot of conversations with just random people, because you're kind of all there for the same reason, so at least that they're into film. So you can, that's something that like starts every conversation, and you're talking, when you take the shuttles from different theaters into Main Street, you're talking with people on the shuttles, you're talking with people who are waiting in line in front of you to get into the movie or behind you. Even the people, like when the line snakes around you, there's people right next to you, so you start talking to them too. You overhear stuff and then you jump in, and it's really crazy. But I mean, I'm not going to mention my number one yet, but I felt like this year no one was talking about my number one. I had to keep telling everybody that was my favorite one. So I feel like maybe I don't know. It's just a satisfying feeling to choose one that nobody's talking about, and then later on have it, you kind of like, your choice was like justified, like later on,
Yeah. You could be that guy who says, I liked the film before it was
Karlo
cool.
had Dee.
Oh yeah, Karlo did have Dee. It's funny because all I can remember last year, which was all of our first time being at the Sundance Film Festival, was like coming back every night and kind of just like venting and talking about the films. And then I look back and I'm like, wait, we kind of predicted what's actually happening this award season right now. Like all of our predictions have kind of come to fruition. And we kind of called it first, even though we didn't record those thoughts then, which is kind of, like you said, refreshing, Afrim, to be like, I was the first one to be talking about this film. And, now they're winning awards.
You know what it is too? I feel like a lot of other sites and other, publications and reviewers, I feel like they all, well, not all, but most of them get kind of sucked into the bubble of, oh, these are the good movies at the festival. You know what I mean? Like last year, it was Love Lies Bleeding. I Saw the TV Glow. Those were the ones that were like, you have to like this one. And this year,
and you have the big names, which I think too, there's some bias when there are these big names. And that's why, like when I was kind of selecting the films in my top three, I don't know, personally want to give credit to the films that have no names. Because it's just like, it's insane to see how amazing some of the acting is, especially for some of the foreign films that I watched. I was just like blown away by the acting. And I've never heard of these actors or actresses before in my life. I'm like, huh.
Just going off the top of my head, I almost feel like even though last year, even being at the festival, I think we could all kind of tell this year was a little bit, it felt more like a down or like slower year than even last year. Meanwhile, granted, those are only 2 years, but we can tell the difference between the two, But I feel like I actually saw overall more good movies this year than I did last year. I don't know if you guys feel that same way, that the general, I guess, not value, but the general kind of like quality of the films overall to me was a little bit better, at least for the ones that I saw, than last year.
Yeah, I think for me, films have just, like Steve, they grow on you. And as the weeks go on, I feel like the thought process of each of the films we've seen, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, that was really good, this moment or this element, And, for my top three, like it was kind of a tie between Magic Farm and Virgin of the Quarry Lake. And I ended up going with Virgin of the Quarry Lake just based upon the fact that this is an Argentina-based film, and a lot of the actors and actresses, like, I've never heard of. And the acting was impeccable. I mean, it was delivered in such a beautiful way. And I don't know, there's something about, I feel like sometimes not knowing an actor and actress, it's just like, I feel like I pay more attention to the plot in a different way. It's just more refreshing. And there's a scene, this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but I have to say it because it's still in my brain and it's so disturbing. But one of the main characters, she basically starts her period and she doesn't have like pads or anything. So she grabs like just a chunk of cotton and like puts it in there and goes outside to help make coffee. And this is when you all of a sudden get this picture that she's super jealous of this other girl who she's making coffee for. And so she takes the cotton that's now filled with her menstrual blood and squeezes it in the coffee cup. And it's like, I cannot get that image out of my mind. Like, I will forever remember that moment. But, you know, like, I grew up watching films like The Craft and Carrie, and you see these type of characters have different types of jealousy and how they kind of use that jealousy in different ways through magic and things like that. And so this film is kind of similar to that backdrop where there is some like magical elements of spells, but also just how these females, man, when they get jealous, they take it to another level. And I feel like sometimes when I watch international films, I watch American films and I think to myself, like, this is like so passive aggressive compared to like what they're doing in other countries when they're making these films. It's just like, this is insane what this person would do just because she's jealous of a guy and a girl like being together, you know? It's just like, what? Are you mad? But this film just like, it's premise based off of like the early 2000s, and it shows like her in internet cafes and things like that, but just it really shines a light on how vindictive and how jealous one can be when it comes to like being the third wheel in a relationship. And I think, Steve, this is definitely something you need to watch because I think you'd quite enjoy it.
What's the name again?
Version of the Quarry Lake.
Got it.
Starts out with the girl masturbating in the bathtub. So, Afrim, maybe you would like that one too. I don't know.
What? Why? Oh my god. Oh boy.
That's the other thing about these films.
Film critic.
I see the art in it. Okay, guys? Jeez. Grow up.
I know, we're adults here. We're adults. That was a low blow, Afrim.
We are called Shade Studios.
Boom. All right. Did everybody do their top three?
No, I have to do my three, my number three. And you know what? My number three is, I mean, I'm a Brooklyn guy, you know, having lived in Dumbo for a bunch of years. So I'm going to put Love Brooklyn as my number three. And I know a lot of people actually didn't like this one because they said that...
this is on my list.
Oh, it is on your list. Okay, well then, I mean, I have two that could be.
It's
so
okay.
If you want to talk about
I'll just roll into mine since you're already talking about it.
Okay. I mean, Love Brooklyn is just, I don't know what people were talking about how they wanted more, or, you know, just like more stuff to happen or more issues to be spoken about. I mean, I'm watching Love Brooklyn and I'm like, you know what? This is a pretty good movie. There are actors here that are just accurately portraying what adults go through in relationships. I mean, it's starring Andre Holland, who's in like seemingly everything nowadays.
He was in 42. He was in Moonlight. He was in Selma. Most recently, Shirley last year. I mean, the guy is like exhibiting forgiveness. Won a bunch of accolades last year too. Like, yeah, that guy's on a tear.
I mean, he is everywhere. And his two main love interests are Nicole Bahari, who, if you watch the morning show, she's like the new former athlete turned morning host. And it's a beautifully shot film. I think people from New York City would probably jive with it more than people that have no idea how Brooklyn is. So maybe I'm a bit biased. I mean, I'm saying I'm a bit biased, but I think it was just beautifully shot. I think it had a strong script. It's basically a slice of life. It's a guy that was formerly in a relationship with Nicole Bahari, who plays Casey, and then he's at the same time getting involved with another woman who's a single mother, looking for her kind of next steps after her ex-husband was killed in an accident. right? So, there's nothing fancy. I think it's just a well shot movie, well acted, and it's just nice to watch. I mean, I don't know. It was a movie that I wouldn't have expected at Sundance per se. I may have expected that at, maybe Tribeca. And it's one of those movies where, I could see a bunch of girls watching it, on not a girls' night out, but like a girls' night in, just kind of soaking that kind of drama between the characters. Because a girl like that, a guy like that, and just seeing them play it out in a well executed movie was actually kind of refreshing given some of the other stuff that was playing at Sundance, and it's not as depressing. So I guess you can chalk it up to the happy list.
Yeah, I'll go into that since that's on my list for number 2. That and Ricky kind of tied. Completely different films, both actually based in New York. I do think the only qualms I had about Love Brooklyn is that if you haven't lived, I think, in this area, I don't think it would hit home as much, just because when they're going into these different environments, it's kind of like, oh, that's Prospect Park, or, this is this location. So it has a bit more meaning for somebody who's from that area. But I feel like if I hadn't lived in New York before and watching that film, it just would have been kind of like, oh, I need to research this to figure out like what these places are, and then it would make sense. But again, like, it's really kind of going through the community and what it's like to live in that environment. So it really is more of a love letter to those who have kind of lived in that specific environment. And Ricky is completely different. It's about a guy basically who was imprisoned at the age of 15. He gets let out of jail 15 years later, and he has had no experience in the real world at all. And he's trying to just try to keep out of jail, and it's like everything and anything that could go wrong with his parole officer basically happens. And so it's like an interesting kind of just story of somebody from East Hartford who is, trying to like keep out of jail, and, unfortunately didn't have a father who raised him to really just kind of guide him through what's right and what's wrong, and even just having relationships with women. Like, he is so awkward. He doesn't even know how to talk to women. But completely different than Love Brooklyn, but kind of has that East Coast vibe going on. And one's more of a love story. The other is kind of has some love elements in it, but that awkward love of, like the first time he is having sex with a woman, and like not understanding like what to do, and just trying to get a girl's number for the first time too, were kind of just interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But yeah, again, that was kind of just a bit of a tie for me. Didn't really know which one I was going to go with, but both were really just great films in general.
And a little bit more on Love Brooklyn. It's funny because there's actually more love shown to the borough of Brooklyn itself, as opposed to even the characters that are in it. Like Bed-Stuy has never looked that good, and I'm watching it. I'm like, wow, I'd really want to live in Bed-Stuy, right? But like, let's be real. This was a Sundance movie, so there has to be a Sundance angle, right? And the broader theme that they didn't really play so much on, which probably may have worked to its benefit, and much to the chagrin of others, where they were probably saying more of this should have happened. But Andre Holland's character is a writer who was hired onto some unnamed publication. Presumably it's a much bigger publication. And they brought him on board to talk about the gentrification of Brooklyn, is basically what it is. But instead of the movie actually dealing with these issues of gentrification in Brooklyn, I preferred, and I liked it better, that they spent more time just exploring kind of the personal relationships. So I guess it's like...
It's essentially a love triangle, and...
Yeah.
A very common love triangle, and it's just very reminiscent and realistic. Though I did see, people, I even said this in my review actually, is just that like it's supposed to take place kind of after COVID, but it kind of felt like it was during COVID because some of the scenes were lacking people. So Prospect Park There were maybe like 2 people in the park. And I remember walking through Prospect Park during COVID, and like after it, everyone wanted to be outdoors. So there's just like so many people around. And even like bars and restaurants that they were in, they were kind of like the only ones in the restaurant. So I think that I don't know if that was taste of just not wanting to have other people kind of like take away from like the setting of the primary focus in relationships, but there weren't a lot of people. It was a little bit more apocalyptic. All right, moving to number 2 for you guys.
My number 2 would be If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. So this film, I sat down not really knowing what to expect, and I was sitting next to somebody I'd met earlier in the week, and as soon as the film came on, the A24 logo came up, and we just turned to each other and we just kind of went, like now I know what we're getting into. So apparently A24 already had this movie, and it is definitely one of those kind of A24 films where it's very much an art film, but also told in a really kind of gritty way. So this is the story of a mother of a daughter who's probably about 10 years old. We never see the face of the daughter. In fact, the whole film is really claustrophobic because it's shot almost entirely in close-up. So you don't get any kind of, it's very difficult to have a sense of space and where you are. There's very few establishing shots, these kind of things. So it's really centered on this woman played by Rose Byrne. This is a really, really good role for her, and kind of coming to terms with, did she ever bond with her daughter? And her daughter, like I said, is about 10 years old, and she has some sort of an illness. We don't know what it is, where she has a feeding tube connected to her, and so she requires like attention 24/7. And it's this mother becoming more and more, I guess, neglectful would be about the only way you could put this. So, kind of spiraling into drugs and alcohol and just leaving the daughter alone for extended periods of time. And on top of all of this, she is seeing a psychiatrist played by Conan O'Brien. I think this may be his first feature film. I don't know. He was really good in it. And so she's trying to work through her own personal demons. And then we discover, oh yeah, she's also a psychotherapist. So she has her own clientele of people that she's trying to counsel, such as a woman who has a newborn baby and is experiencing some of these same feelings of motherhood and like not knowing what to do and not really feeling attached to your own child and the guilt associated with that. And so there's a lot of parallels there. It's just, I remember last year there was a movie called Night Bitch. I saw that at
Night
Sundance.
Bitch. Yeah.
And that was so this is kind of like that in a way, although that was a much more fun, lighthearted take on motherhood. Whereas this one it's kind of depressing in a lot of ways. And it has a great cameo also, Afrim, that I was not expecting. And so that was kind of fun because you keep hearing this voice of her husband, who's a ship's captain. He's off at sea, so he's never around. And you keep hearing him on the phone, and I kept thinking, I think I know that voice, but I can't place what it is. And then you find out at the end. That was kind of fun. But this was very much a powerful film. I think this film will, once it gets more of a wide release, I think people are really going to discover this film, and I think it has legs.
You know what I think is interesting too with like Night Bitch and all these other kind of films that are discussing what it's like to kind of be a mother, where social media, I feel like all of these moms are trying to be perfect on social media and show the perfections of what it's like to raise their kids. But then, with these small indie films, it's quite interesting how they're taking these interpretations of like real life, of what it feels like for a lot of women to raise children, and being at home alone and really bringing life to that, where it's like, I think people, again, just get sick and tired of watching things where it's like this perfect story of what this is like, the Betty Crocker mom at home that bakes and does this. And I think of Night Bitch, and I don't know why, Steve, but I keep thinking of her making those hash browns every morning. And so all I can think of when I go to the grocery store, I'm like, I'm not buying those hash browns. It reminds me of Amy Adams cooking that every day on replay.
Yeah, I think these movies really speak to this an under approached theme in movies, I guess, is motherhood not being what kind of culture expects it to be. It expects you to be as a mother, and to even address the issue of like, I don't feel connected to my own child is sort of a topic that is almost like heresy to even discuss that. It's like,
Yeah,
right, but
yeah.
I'm sure
It's like
this
you
is
want to be a
something.
part of the Golden Moms Club group, where
Right.
everyone is
And I'm sure it's something
perfect.
that every mom experiences to some extent or another. There has to be moments where they think, did I make the right decision to even have a child? But I think to be able to voice that and to make a movie out of it. This is also Mary Bronstein, I believe, is the writer-director of this film. And this is her first feature film. And I think she just knocked it out of the park. It's really good.
Very nice. Afram, what's your number two?
Well, before I proceed with my number two, I do want to say that Steve's little pun did not go unnoticed, where he
Thank you.
said he said the
But
movie would
but
have legs.
I think it'll have legs.
I was holding on to that one. I was like, my leaky brain, please hold on to this one.
soon
I
to be
know.
quoted in the film, Steve.
Yeah.
I almost put that in my review, but I didn't. And so here I got to save it for this.
I might have to re-edit that review now and go back, Steve.
Editor's
Shade
note.
Studios, film has legs.
By the way, the title of that movie, if I had legs, I'd kick you, is a bit of a mystery. So I think it's one of these titles that's an ambiguous title that you kind of make of it as you will.
Okay. I'm going to go on the complete opposite side then of a title, because this one is basically the perfect description of the movie. My number two is a movie called Twinless, where basically it's about uh, these two guys who lost their twins, and now they're twinless. The end. No, no, but no. So it's a comedy starring Dylan O'Brien, who I believe he's in either Maze Runner or The Hunger. I think Maze Runner or something. I don't know. I forget which film he's in, but I never really saw him before. And my wife, I mentioned his name, she went bananas. Like, she can't wait to see this film, and it will come out. It's just too good. Um, yeah, he plays actually two different roles. He plays two, twin brothers, because you do get to see the other brother before he passed away. And basically, yeah, so it's basically two guys who meet at there's a kind of like an AA meeting type situation, but it's for people who lost their twins, and so that's where they meet, and then that's kind of like the premise of the whole film, and then they kind of like, all right, this is gonna sound, no, I'm not gonna say that. That was gonna be a really bad joke, but basically they kind of like keep each other company from that point on, and they just become friends, and then that's kind of the whole premise of the film. It sounds like there's not a lot going on, but it's actually a really really funny movie, and that was one of the few films that, just talking at Sundance with other critics and other reviewers and other industry folk, that I don't think I met a single one that said that they didn't like that movie. That was the unanimous
Yeah.
favorite that everyone kept talking about. Oh, did you see Twinless? Twinless, Twinless, So that one is definitely my number two. Um, there's one scene in the film that I really, when I saw it, it kind of like smacked me in the face, and I understood it, but I kind of wish it wasn't there. It's like a pretty gratuitous sex scene that just kind of pops out of nowhere, and it's the joke that I've seen before, where basically it's like two people are having sex, but they're like just asking each other like casual questions while this physical act is happening, and it's like I guess the split between like, there's this thing that you're seeing, but then they're talking about something super mundane, like, oh, what's your favorite color, or whatever. And for the rest of the, I just feel like for the rest of the film, that's the only scene in the movie that kind of I didn't need it. Like the joke, didn't really land as strongly as the visual kind of like repelled me a little bit. But beyond that, I mean, this movie is, I mean, it's good. It's really good.
So what you're saying is you should have been the intimacy coordinator on that movie.
See, now I kind of want to see that movie for that scene.
Yeah, come for the sex, stay for the jokes. But yeah, it was kind of wild. It was almost like I feel like years ago that would have been an NC-17 kind of visual,
You see?
but
You would know.
no, yeah, oh right. I think I've seen one NC-17 movie in my life, and it was Showgirls.
That was
But
not good.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
the
it
end
was,
of
and
Jesse Spano's career.
yeah, it was. She's so excited, but so yeah, so I'm definitely gonna go with a really strong twin list. Had my number one not, I mean, the thing is, I'm not gonna mention my number one yet, obviously, but um, I don't know if I just like my number one that much or if it's actually that good. Um, but it hit me different, differently than Twinless did. So if if that movie was not there, Twinless obviously, I mean, just by the numbers would have been number one. And I know that Twinless won a lot of the audience awards and stuff like that that they do, the surveys that they do after the festival. Twinless and Atropia are like two of the top, films that keep coming up there. So I'm not, my three and two are not really, I don't think super wild picks, but when I get into my number one, it'll kind of, I don't want to spoil it.
Is that
If it's the one I'm
Omaha,
thinking-
Afrim? Is that what I'm thinking of? No.
We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that too.
Number one
Between
film
Omaha
early-
and Touch Me, I know it.
I think you saw it early in the week. If it's the film I'm thinking of, and I remember you saying when you saw it, I don't think it's
Oh,
gonna
I
be
already
very
know what
difficult
the.
for any-
Does it start
any
with
film
an
to top
A?
Listen. Omaha, I think was actually the first film I saw of the festival because I believe we did the press line and then I
You and
went to
did
the
press
premiere.
line, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was actually at the premiere of that film, and I mean, whatever. Maybe after we're done, or at some point,
We can
maybe
dissect
before we
other
do.
films,
Wait,
yeah.
before we do our number ones, maybe we could talk about like our biggest disappointment, because there are definitely two that spring to mind that everyone else seemed to like and I didn't like. But sorry, that was my number two. Twinless.
All right, Alfred.
Okay, so my number two is, I guess, similar in theme to Love Brooklyn in that it takes place in New York City, but this is one of those movies that if you told me going into Sundance that I would have put this in my top three of the ones that I've seen, like I just wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. And what's funny is that I think Afrim was the one that was supposed to see this movie, and we pulled him off it to go watch Touch Me. So
Oh,
maybe it
boy.
worked out for you.
Thanks.
You know what I've decided? If Afrim is supposed to see a movie and doesn't, it wins awards. So
Yeah. So look, I mentioned Obex, which was my honorable mention. That's one that Afrim was supposed to see. This is another one that Afrim was supposed to see, and it's my number two, and it's called Mad Bills to Pay. And in parentheses, I guess they translate it into Spanish, Destiny Dile que no soy malo, which means kind of like don't speak bad on me. And it's a slice of life movie about a 19-year-old kid who basically sells nutcrackers on City Island. And I know Afrim knows a lot about City Island because,
I've been
it's a
there
big Bronx
many,
thing,
many,
right?
many times, and I was born and raised in the Bronx, so I know exactly where City Island is, Orchard Beach.
So he sells nutcrackers that he names after video games, like, he has one called the Kirby and something called the Pikachu. But similar to Love Brooklyn, there's not a lot that actually goes on, meaning like there's no real linear plot. And it's fascinating because this movie, it's shot in, so it's shot in 4:3, but they use a lot of these kind of like fixed wide angle lenses, and they just kind of put them in the corner of scenes, whether they're inside, whether they're outside, and artistically in a way it fits with the theme because it makes the world look so big. And this 19-year-old who later will find out that he's going to be a father at 19, it makes him look and feel small. Like the framing and the cinematography is amazing. Like Love Brooklyn, this is the nicest I've ever seen City Island ever. And I've been there, and then you look at it in this movie and you're like, wow, that looks like really nice. It's like the Riviera of the Bronx, and we both know that's not what City Island looks like. But they use a lot of these kind of like fixed camera shots, like in the corners of the scenes. And what it forces the actors to do, I mean, it's like you're watching a reality show of something just happening, like between a family, and it's not. It's completely scripted. So you get a lot of these like long takes. And what's most fascinating is the actors in here. They're all like unknowns, all first timers. This was based off a short from the year prior, basically called Rico. The main character's name is Rico. He's played by an actor named Juan Collado. So for anyone that really knows kind of the performing arts scenes in New York City, he went to LaGuardia, which is right over in near Sunnyside. And it's a very young cast. You don't know any of them, and it's like you're just a fly on the wall watching things implode. So basically the only conflict that happens is he's being raised by a single mother, and this focuses on kind of like the Dominican community in the Bronx, but he's being raised by his single Dominican mother with his sister living at home. And then just kind of out of the blue, he reveals that he's having a kid with his 14-year-old girlfriend. And if that's not crazy enough, the girlfriend moves into the house. And so for the rest of the movie, it's just basically watching these three hot-tempered Dominicans, soon to be fourth because someone's moving in, just kind of grapple and grasp with the fact that he's about to have a kid and he's 19 years old. He has no idea what he's doing in his life. But all this stuff is happening, and let's just kind of roll with the punches and see where it lands. But it's fascinating because it's beautifully shot, unknown actors, well scripted, and it's just one of those things when I was watching it, I was like, this is actually pretty good. And I really didn't think that it would be even close to good. Just looking at kind of like these generic thumbnails that Sundance likes to use for some of their movies, and I'm like,
oh yeah, really sometimes they choose the worst photos.
The worst, and it's like it has nothing to do with the story, and it's like, how is this movie so beautifully shot and you use this as the
it's just like a random frame grab. Yeah,
they just threw a dart and they're like, that's the photo, we're gonna go with that one.
Well, with if I had legs I'd kick you, they literally used the last frame of the movie. It was like the last shot. I couldn't believe it when I
was it
legs,
legs, Steve?
Yeah, right. Wow. Spoiler.
Did they grab some legs? Were they good legs? Because I am a leg model, parts. My legs have been on a lot of photos around the world for campaigns, but you don't see my face, so you would never know.
Actually, I think it's just her face, right? She's just laying down like in the dirt.
Right, she's on the beach and yeah.
Or the sand. Okay, yeah.
With no legs?
Well, the legs are cut off in the frame, so you don't know.
Yeah, I didn't make the cut. I didn't get that job.
I think the Mad Bills to Pay one, is he by just like a railing outside somewhere? There's like a lamppost next to him or some weird... I don't know. It just was so weird looking.
Okay. He's by a railing, like looking off into the sky. You have these seagulls that are like
seagulls
behind. It looks like the top of like a freaking garage, and he's on a fence. You don't even see him really. You're just like, what is this supposed to be? It doesn't, Steve's huge on YouTube, right? So it's not a clickable thumbnail.
No.
It's not even
Like when
remotely.
YouTube gives you 3 random ones you can choose from. And
Yeah,
nobody does that.
and it chooses the worst one. This chose the worst one.
No, we have to do one of those thumbnails where we're all like,
Yeah, the scream face.
yeah, we're all shocked. But wait, so Alfred, you said that Mad Bills to Pay is scripted, but
It's
is it
scripted.
like script? Is it scripted like how Curb is scripted, like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where it's like bullet points and then they just kind of go through it, or is it
No,
actually fully
it's
scripted?
like it's scripted. It's scripted.
Okay.
And when you watch it, there's a particular scene actually. It's funny when he kind of casually tells his mom that he's going to be a dad, and his sister, who's kind of neurotic, is like, what you mean you're going to be your dad? And then she just starts like flipping out, like, you're so dumb, you're so stupid. Like, it's just watching it happen, and it's scripted. So when you're watching it, you're like, man, they really must have got these lines down, because some of these takes are like really long, and because there's no edit, right? Like, it's just cameras here, action's happening, like, finish the scene, and then oftentimes in the scene they'll let the camera run even longer, like on purpose, to give it this kind of like organic quality, and you're like, wow, this is kind of crazy. It's like, where did they edit anything? There are like no cuts in many of these scenes, so
Yeah.
it's different. It's different, and
Oh, Afrim, it's going to win a lot of awards now because you didn't go see it.
I'm confident. I'm confident in my picks.
All right, let's jump into number 1. You want to start,
Oh, boy.
Steve?
Sure.
Wait. Before we do number one, should we do number one and then the disappointments, or should we do the disappointments and have people hang on? Yeah, keep them hooked to get our.
Afrim's ready to be here all day with this live stream.
All right,
He's
sorry.
like, let's just
Sorry,
go.
we'll do number one. We'll do number one.
I do have one quick disappointment, but I'll save it if we get into that.
Yeah, we'll do that afterwards.
My number one though is The Ugly Stepsister, and this film is so much fun to watch. And so this is a Norwegian film, I believe, and it's the story of it's the Cinderella story, but not focused on Cinderella. It's focused on one of the two stepsisters. The ugly stepsister, I guess, is what we're going with here. Even though she's not really ugly at all to begin with, she's just kind of awkward and socially inept, and so it tells the story of her and her mother, Cinderella's stepmother in the classic story, and trying to get her married off to the prince, who of course is going to be having the big ball where he gets to select a bride in basically, kind of like this meat market of girls to go through, and so it's this whole process of her making her daughter more beautiful through all sorts of really horrific techniques and barbaric, and a lot of these, I guess, are kind of historically accurate. These are like, so this is a body horror movie, but a lot of these, I guess if you would kind of consider it early cosmetic surgery, with like busting a chisel against your bridge of your nose to give you a rhinoplasty.
Instead of contour, Steve, you're busting and cracking.
Just like chop right in there. Oh my God. And there's just these horrific, and it just goes from like bad to worse, and just trying to make her more and more beautiful to appeal to the prince. And I would normally say that this is a spoiler, but the director actually is open about talking about her inspiration for this movie was, I guess, the original Grimm fairy tale, which I think those are often quite grim, was the idea of she couldn't fit into the shoe, the stepsister, and then they realized there was a lot of blood in it because she had cut off her toes to fit into the shoe. And so this is the kind of the extremes. And so on a larger picture, this speaks to body image, and very kind of similar to the way that the Substance spoke on these issues, and especially for young girls and kind of coming of age and being already insecure about your looks and your body and how you're perceived by society and culture, and especially men. And it's quite heartbreaking.
Plastic
It's
surgery is
empowering.
early too, Steve. Like people
Yeah.
get sweet 16 surgeries now. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like breast
God.
implants, that's like a new gift at 16, or you could get a
Ugh.
nose job.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like a new
Well,
gift, quinceanera gift. Oh, sweetie, what
yeah.
would you like? Would you like your butt implants, breast implants, or would you like your nose redone?
Gotta get you that BBL for your quinceanera. Oh, wow.
I mean, Dr. Ramsey was offering all of these services at the Ugly Stepsister press line, so
That's right. It was great talking to the director of this film, because this was one of the rare opportunities where I was able to see the movie before interviewing the cast and the director, and it was real fun to see that she has this kind of body horror pedigree, and so she was like really into these films, and so I was able to point out parts of the movies that very much were inspired by David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, which was also a surgeon kind of film. And so I think that she was happy that those things didn't go unnoticed. So I think that was
You
really
nailed
cool.
that interview, Steve.
Oh, thank
You
you.
pretty
Thank
much
you.
said every type of association to any other film, and she was like, "What? How did you know?" Yes, it was like you read her mind.
Because I've seen like
it's like
40
Steve, are you a
billion
producer
horror
on this?
films since the beginning of time, and I can track. Oh yeah, I know what that's from. I know what that's from. But yeah, that was my favorite. The Ugly Stepsister is just a phenomenal movie, and all of the characters, including Cinderella herself, actually have their own story arc, which is really nice to follow.
Great pick, Steve. All right, who wants to go next?
I guess I can go with my number one. So it is not it, all right. So my number one is actually a documentary, which I'm not normally into documentaries, but this one just played so much like a regular film, because the main character is, the subject is such a character himself. Like, so the name of the film is called Andre is an Idiot. And when it first started, I didn't know what to expect, because even that one had that weird thumbnail. I don't
With
know if
the
you
big
you
twisty hair.
yeah, with the big puff of hair, and he's just like, staring into the camera. And when I first saw that, I was like, what the hell is this going to be about? Because you really have no idea based on that one picture. And but then when you watch the film, like, the picture makes sense afterwards. They still probably could have chosen a better one, but whatever. So basically, there's this advertising, uh, this guy named Andre Riccardi, and he's actually San Francisco, based. And he finds out essentially that he has stage 4 colon cancer, because it wouldn't be a Sundance movie without one of the big diseases, right? So he basically, yeah, and he had an opportunity to get a colonoscopy earlier, maybe like a year prior to his diagnosis, and he didn't do it because, his friend one of his best friends had invited him to go do like a duet, like kind of a dual colonoscopy, like a friend thing or whatever, where you kind of do it at the same time. And Andre was like, that's weird. I'm not going to do that. Like, why would I do that with you? And which, I mean, I kind of understand that reaction too. And so the other friend went on his own, and Andre didn't go. And then, about approximately, I think it's a year later, he actually is diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. So had he gone and gotten that colonoscopy, he probably would have been totally fine, or it would have been, much easier to deal with. And so because he didn't go, his mother called him an idiot. Actually, can I curse here or no?
Yeah,
So,
it's late enough
all right.
in
Bleep.
life.
I won't. Yeah, I won't. I'll just say effing. So his mother said Andre's an effing idiot, and that's why I'm sure if he could have had that in the title, they probably would have had that in the title. So, but they cut that out and just called Andre's an idiot. And it's, even though Atropia and Twinless, my numbers 3 and 2, were comedies, Andre's an Idiot to me was actually funnier than either of those films, and it's about a guy who basically believes he's gonna pass away soon, so he makes a documentary about his like final whatever time he has left basically on Earth. And it's weird because I mean, it's not a spoiler. A simple, Google search will show that he passed away. But um, in the movie, because you hear stage four and you just think like, okay, that's obviously grim. But because the guy is so like magnanimous and like so lovable and just quirky, I mean, the film starts with him telling a story about how he was masturbating at his grandparents' house and got like splinters in the tip of his penis because he rubbed it
Oh,
on the underside of yeah, because he rubbed it on the underside of a sink thinking that it was finished like a countertop, but the bottom was just like plywood.
Ow.
Yeah.
that's so painful.
Yeah, and that's how the movie starts, is him telling
Oh,
that story. Yeah, and then as soon as he tells that story, like it just kind of immediately puts the whole theater at ease and just starts cracking up like, okay, this is the kind of guy he is. He's very open, and then he starts talking about his life. And I mean, this guy lived like three people's lifetimes in, 53 years or however long he lived, and he's just such an entertaining character that if this was like a fictional movie, you would think, like this guy has to survive because he's just too like he's the main guy. He's too funny. He's too lovable. He has such a high spirit that he has to survive. But then, like Alfred, I think you were mentioning, was it third act, I believe, where you said it took place over some years, and then like you kind of
mm,
saw the
Yeah, and then it
progression.
progresses.
deterioration. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the last, it's weird. It's such a surreal movie because the first, I think it's 88 minutes or something, so it breezes by. It's not over. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Um, Probably the first, 75 minutes or so, or 72 minutes are funny, even though you have this kind of like, you know, this dark feeling in the back of your mind, like we're headed towards something really bad, and we're all kind of whistling past the graveyard, I guess
Mm.
the terminology, where something bad is most likely coming up, but you're just having such a fun time right now that you're like purposely blocking it out and ignoring it. But then the last 15 minutes or so hit, and then you actually can now physically see the manifestation of like you know he's near the end. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks because he just looks, you know 30-40 pounds lighter, and he's a skinny guy in general. But I mean, he's like gaunt, like his like you can literally see him like withering away in front of your eyes. And then you don't know what's more painful, like seeing the physical manifestation of the cancer, or seeing that his spirit like can't keep up anymore. Like
Mm.
you don't. It's hard to tell which one is more painful. And so I went from like laughing for the first, like 70 minutes of the movie to like my eyes were like welled up with tears for the last 10 or 15 minutes before the credits. And like I mean, I don't even want to mention any more about it because it's just. And then there's like a brilliant connection to his advertising career at the very end. So it's it's really good. It's super moving. And of course, Steve, as soon as the film started, I saw that A24 logo, and I was like,
It's gonna be good.
okay, it's gonna be good. As soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, this isn't this
A24
at least.
verified.
Even if it's a clunker, it'll at least be interesting,
Right.
because
Right.
I'm not all about every single A24 movie ever, but at
Same.
least they bring something like interesting to the table. And this one was by far it moved me more than like any movie in recent memory.
Mm.
And it is by far my number one film of Sundance 2025. Andre is an idiot. Oh,
No.
Yeah,
and nobody
you
was
got me.
talking about it. That's the best part. Nobody was talking about it.
Uh-oh.
Like
Kneecap
I kept
2.0.
mentioning, yeah,
Uh,
I kept kneecap 2.0. I kept mentioning to people in line. I was like, so what was your favorite so far? And they're like, you know, oh, like rebuilding, or one of these other ones or whatever. A lot of people mention Twinless as a top one, but not their favorite. But nobody mentioned Andre's an Idiot. Like, not a single person I asked. And I asked probably 20 to 25 people over the course of the 7 days or so. Like, what's your favorite movie here? What's your favorite movie? And not a single one mentioned Andre's an Idiot. So I'm like, all right, I think I picked the one.
Nice.
Afrim
I
is
feel
a
like
sage.
we would have enough this year, honestly, to do a list just primarily on documentaries, because I realized like the documentary list of films was so strong this year.
Lots.
And I almost
Lot of
like had such a
documentaries.
difficult
Yeah, for
time
sure.
kind of nailing down my number one because it's also a documentary. But like Predators was amazing, and that's like based off of the show How to Catch a Predator. Do you guys remember that back in the day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi,
And that
I'm
was
Chris
really
Hansen. Can
interesting.
you take a seat right there, please?
And then Middletown, which you guys know because you're kind
Mm.
of like from that area, that whole landfill mess that happened near the aquifer and how that like got into the water. That was really interesting because it involved students in high school who actually unraveled the entire case of that, which is kind of crazy. Like it was a course that you could take in high school and they would go out and kind of gather evidence as to what the landfill was actually doing to the aquifer and the water in the surrounding area. But that, interesting enough, wasn't in the documentary section for awards. I think that was like in the premiere section. But my number one ended up going to Seeds, which Alfred saw some tidbits of. And I think Seeds just, I don't know, it took me a second. That one definitely grew on me over the weeks, just like what some of your films did to you, Steve. It's based upon a 9-year filming of black farmers, and it's very generational, but it's shot in black and white. But when you're watching it, it almost feels like you're looking through a photo album and kind of going through and interpreting a story through photos. So they really kind of took their time with the production of this film. Sometimes there are scenes where there are no people in there. Like it's just like people will walk off, but the camera doesn't follow that character. It just kind of sits still in that moment. So again, you're just kind of like taking in the environment. And then it kind of goes into the generations of these black farmers and how one of the farmers has like a centennial farm, which has been in his family for over 100 years. And then they kind of talk about how a lot of these black farmers have lost their farms over time, and a lot of it has to do with the evolution of these major farms that have this high equipment type technology to really outpace the other small farmers. And it kind of goes through what they have to do in order to kind of survive, and there's difficulties with getting funding from the government, but also just kind of going through these like cheat sheets of how they farm. One of the guys talks about even using just like this map in the newspaper that his grandmother taught him based off of astrology, and like they use astrology in order to understand like when they're going to have good crops, which is kind of crazy to think about. He was like talking about like the moon and the sun, and we're going to have great crops for this season because this is what like this astrology calendar says, versus like using this high-tech technology to kind of decipher what's going to work for their farms. But there's just a lot of interesting artistic shots too, where it really like hones in on the farmer's hands, and you can kind of like see the details and like how hard this farmer has worked over the centuries. And it talks about generations and lineage. And so one of the farmers in one of the scenes that like hit home for me was like he is on his farm, which is acres and acres, and he's got grandchildren who have built their home on his land, and then it's like his great grandchildren there as well, and he just sees them sitting in the farm, and he's like, this is like what I've worked so hard for, is for this moment to like see that they have a place, they have a home, and this will continue to be passed down from generation to generation. So it's just got like a very simple storyline, and I don't think they give so much context and detail as far as like speaking, but a lot of the imagery really just like unfolds this beautiful black and white picture. And the fact that they filmed it over 9 years is incredible as far as like the patience that went into like concocting these different storylines of the different farmers. And you really do feel for some of the farmers. Like one of the older farmers, they basically show him selling a couple walnuts at a farm, or pecans, and he doesn't sell very much, and then he goes to see an orthopedic surgeon or whatever to like get his eyes checked, and or not orthopedic, an eye doctor, just a general eye doctor, to go get new glasses. And he gives his insurance card, and they tell him how much it will cost essentially to pay for the glasses. And you realize, like, this guy is barely making it, and he can barely afford these glasses, and he's in his 80s, and you just, like, feel for him because he's working all day and night to, like, just make ends meet on his farm, but yet he can barely pay for the essentials. So Seeds Goes Down is my number one.
I saw parts of that, as Marissa mentioned, and if I had to encapsulate it and drill it down to like a sentence of what I felt like it was like watching a really good Ken Burns documentary mixed with the cinematography of, and it's funny because we were actually talking about this in the latter days of Sundance. Do you remember the God Made a Farmer commercial?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it does remind me of those, with
like,
that guy's perfect
like
voice.
That.
What was it like? He'd be like,
looks
and God
like
made
that.
a farmer. It was like this super deep, rich voice, but you're like, man, that's
After
really
Sundance,
cool.
I
God.
can probably tell you how it
Thank
was.
God for the farmers. God made a farmer.
Yes.
I think it was
Sam
for Dodge
Elliott.
Ram, right?
Yeah, I think or
Yeah,
Hidden
probably
Valley.
so.
Yeah, it was the ranch commercials,
Yeah.
and I feel like they
Yeah,
had
and-
like hands with like some weed or something in it.
Weed.
Not wheat, like wheat and like seeds
no,
or
no,
something.
no,
Weed
no.
too.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, Afrim, what kind of farm is this?
Yeah, I actually, it's
She's
funny
not
just bringing up
She's not talking about Ricky, okay?
just bringing up Sam Elliott. I literally just watched The Big Lebowski last night, and
That's a good one.
his like stranger, character, the voice in the movie where he's like, I mean, that's just pretty darn fine with me, like that. That's like what it sounds like in that God Made a Farmer, like Super Bowl. I think it was a Super Bowl commercial from, I don't know, maybe 7-8
Yeah.
years ago or something.
Well, because you remember when that Super Bowl commercial came out and the visuals of it were like, wow, they're taking themselves seriously. Well, Seeds is definitely a serious movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense, and it makes sense there. Yeah, but Seeds is really good. And also, I just mentioned Ricky, but I'm not sure if Marissa mentioned this, but there's a certain actor in Ricky.
Bosh.
Wait,
That's my own
really good.
complaint, is that he didn't have a bigger role in Ricky, but yeah. Do you guys see Bosch, the TV series Bosch?
No, I are you talking about the main actor, the Irish Scott? No, what is he? Is he Irish?
Titus Welliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, him. Yeah, no, I
Titus.
know exactly who he is. Yeah. He's a great actor.
Badass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was just a small piece, which I thought was going to be more integral to the film, but we just got a little sliver of him, unfortunately. I wanted more.
All right, so I guess that
Did
leaves me for the number one.
Yeah. Well, your number one is kind of like one of my top picks, but I was going to take it from you, so it's fine. You can have it.
My number one is crazy. It's crazy,
It
and I
is.
didn't expect it to be this crazy. But from the moment it like fades in, you're like, what the heck am I watching here? And it's just like all real. So for a year where Sundance was really stacked with documentaries, definitely more so than last year, 2 of my 3 were features. And my number one is also a documentary. Well, I guess it is a documentary. And it's 2,000 Meters to Andriivka, which is...
This will have you on your
follows
toes.
the Ukrainian forces. Oh, yeah. Like, it follows the Ukrainian forces. It basically, the title of the movie is what's happening. So they have to advance 2,000 meters to try and capture Andriivka, which is like a tactical point for them against the Russian invasion. And when I tell you, this movie is just going to blow you away. Like, it is like, if I bring up a video game reference, Call of Duty 2, Afrim. When I mention that to you, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I hate to put you on the spot here, but I think I started playing Call of Duty at part 4.
Ouch.
Oh,
I'm
More
sorry.
like Saving
Well,
Private Ryan multiplied.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I remember.
the
Oh, are you
crazy
talking about? Wait,
part
are you talking about Medal? Are you talking about Medal of Honor?
Medal of Honor? Yeah.
Medal
Yeah.
of Honor Frontline, where you have that opening scene where you're on the beach,
Yes.
like at
Yes.
Omaha Beach, I think it is, or wherever, and they're just like trying to storm.
Yeah.
Did you say
Mhm.
Omaha?
So
Is that?
Andreevka
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I
plays.
know, right?
So Andreevka feels like, I mean, everything is in first person. So they basically mount GoPros onto different soldiers' heads, and there's no
Mm.
guarantee that the soldiers actually make it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Some of them
you'll be
die.
watching
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
some will
They'll die
just
and they have to pass
like
off the
die
camera.
in front of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
Oh wow.
I'll never forget, like in the intro sequence, someone gets hit and he's like, I'm hit, and then all of a sudden he's like, I can't get out of the hole, and then he just like leans over,
Oh my
you
god.
know, and it just
Mm-hmm.
it's unapologetic, right? It's like, okay, well then on to the next man and strap a
Do
GoPro
you,
onto the next person.
do you know
And
the
what
backstory behind
yeah.
this film? About it was just a privately funded thing where they asked to get involved with the military
We'll
and do this?
talk about how hard it was to get the film. What did they have to do to get the film? They hid it or something, right?
Oh, well, for this one, yeah, they had to like smuggle it out.
They smuggled
It
the
was
film
partially
out.
like smuggling it out. Yeah. Well, there's another one I watched called Nobody Other Than Putin, or like Nobody versus
No, I think it's
Mr.
Mr.
Nobody versus
Nobody.
Putin. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that they actually had to smuggle the stuff out to get it published. Similar to another movie, not at Sundance, called Seed of the Sacred Fig. Like,
Hmm.
just crazy the kind of
Oh,
documentaries that are
that
being made.
storyline's
But
insane. And the actors like can't
yeah,
even leave because of that
yeah.
film. Like two of the main
So
actors. It's crazy.
with this film, what's crazy is everything that you're seeing is just it's real, you know, and they're just editing pieces of it. So the timeline is kind of you're at 2,000 meters, and then they get closer. It's like 600 meters, 300 meters as you get closer. But you really feel for the Ukrainian platoon that you're following because people literally get knocked off left and right. And what's crazy is because you're getting this like first person view, you feel kind of lonely with them when they're out on the field. So a lot of this footage is basically GoPro footage. It's GoPro footage of the person speaking, first person GoPro footage, and then they have a drone that follows them, which is kind of funny because they had military drones, and kind of like within the military drones, they had the drone that they were going to use for the movie. And you'll get these interchanges between soldiers or the documentary or the director actually speaking to some of these soldiers about what's going on and even learning about their backstories, where they're from, what they're going to do. And then just like out of nowhere, you'll get a voiceover and it's like, and this person ends up dying like 5 months later or getting killed
Yeah.
in battle like 5 months later. So you're just like,
That's
what
Because
the
heartbreaking.
heck am I
they're in the
like,
moment,
it's
like they have no
crazy.
clue, right? They'll just all of a sudden be a part of this whole troop set, and then they're new to the gang, and you're like, oh, this guy seems like he's going to survive, and they'll be like, actually, this guy dies 3 months later, and this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
how he dies. But also,
I
Alfred,
mean,
talk
it's
about
crazy.
like the stretch of this forest, like where it mainly takes place,
Yeah.
like how crazy this
I mean,
silly forest
it's
is.
literally like barren land. It's barren land and like a tiny strip of forest which looks like hell on earth. And they're basically just trying to advance like 1 meter at a time, and it's so hard for them to do it. And I think it's an interesting, if you're trying to form an opinion on what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, I mean, I think it's very interesting to see this side of it.
Hmm.
You're probably not going to get much from the Russian side other than what they want you to hear. But on the Ukrainian side, you do get this feeling of being under resourced, and you have these stories of like people that used to be in Russia and then they came over to Ukraine and they can't believe what's going on. You get a lot of purview into the weakness of some of the Russian morale, like the soldiers.
Hmm.
There are some moments where, if you remember in Saving Private Ryan, where they're invading in Normandy and they're throwing these pipe grenades into the bunker with the Nazis, you see that kind of stuff, but it's like real. Like they're trying to snuff out the people, and you're just like, I can't
Hmm.
believe what I'm watching right now. Not edited, no CGI. It cost 1/300th to make this movie than it was to make Masters of Air. And we all know how I cannot stand the special effects in Masters of Air, because I just can't understand how you spend 9 digits on a movie and have stuff just look fake when this guy he's actually like a documentarian for the Associated Press. All he has to do is put the GoPros on and put a drone in the air, and you have like a much more compelling story than
It's all
some
in
of
the
these,
editing.
like, big budget things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all in the editing and like really timely voiceover. Like there's only so much he can do, right? That you have all this footage, you kind of have to piece it together for something. But it does make it there's a lot of emotional impact when you realize that these people that you're spending time with, similar to soldiers, right? When soldiers, they spend a lot of time with their unit, that they just like go away. Or in many cases, I mean, there are shots where when it's in first person, like you're the soldier getting killed. And then there are other shots where you're seeing people you've spent significant screen time with getting killed. It's crazy. Like, this needs to get distributed and people need to watch it because it's
Well, it's
such an
crazy.
insane
So
documentary. I
2,000
was
meters
shocked.
is what? 6,560 feet.
Yeah, it's just over a
That's
mile.
It's like just over a mile, and I mean, this mile seems like years in this film. So the way that they edit it, it makes you feel every single inch that they're moving, and it's like they've only made it this far. There's no way. Like, how are they not getting that far?
Wow.
And in an age when people are shooting like on big cameras, Venice 2s, and I'm like, this is really good footage if this is what GoPros are doing nowadays. Like, even the sound is good, right? Because like you don't have a guy holding a boom mic with you. You basically have your two people that you've mounted the GoPros to, and I'm like, wow, this is it is you guys need to see it.
Yeah,
when it comes out.
it's
I hope it
very
gets
good.
good.
Well, what was his film that won the year before, Alfred?
So okay, yeah, it is worth mentioning. So the director of this is I'm going to butcher this, but it's not spelled phonetically convenient for us Americans. Stislav Chernov, and he actually won an Academy Award in 23 for Best Documentary for 20 Days in Mariupol. I don't know if any of you kind of saw that, but he's Ukrainian, and obviously he's interested in telling the story. And I'm just like, man, I need to go back and see 20 Days in Mariupol, but I have a feeling this one's even more exciting. Like, I couldn't stop watching it. Like, the moment I had it on, and I streamed this one too. I kind of wish I saw it in the theater, but I streamed this one, and it didn't really feel like a documentary at times. It actually felt like a better war
real
movie. And
like
if
you were
don't
in the
believe me,
war with them.
Yeah, there's a movie out there starring Afrim Nicolas Cage from like 20 years ago called
The Rock.
Wind
No,
Talkers.
I feel like The Rock.
No, not The Rock.
My all-time
The Wind
favorite, The
Talkers,
Rock.
where
What?
He's like going to war with the Navajo tribe,
remember that.
and
Yeah.
it's just like not a good movie, and they're playing silly music during the fight scenes, and you're watching 2,000 meters to Enrica, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm getting my ass shot. Like, it's so real. So that's my number one.
It's amazing. Just think how many
Great.
movies like that could get made for the price of one Dwayne Johnson.
Or for the price
Red
of one
One.
Captain
Can we
America
get
Brave
that
New
money
World.
back for Red One, please? 200 and what, like 50 million or something?
I like how that's become like
Seriously.
the standard for Hollywood accent.
Alfred, are you talking about Captain Corelli's mandolin?
Hey, Penelope Cruz was in that. Okay, that's much better than Wind Talkers. No, I think the guy in Wind Talkers is Michael Pena, if I remember it correctly. It was such an underwhelming war movie, 2002. No.
Well,
Adam Beach.
first off, Steve, can you turn off your car alarm, please?
That's
No,
not
I was
me.
going to say, guys, can you hear it? It's across from me, the garage. And
it's
every time
you.
it shuts off, I keep looking over. I'm like, there it goes again. I'm like, can somebody, I don't think it's going to get shut off because it's in this parking garage. And it like
Oh,
literally
no.
takes a
Have those
2-second
things.
break.
It seems funny that somebody still has a car alarm, because if you ever hear one, you're not thinking, oh, somebody's getting their car stolen. You're just
Yeah,
thinking,
like
oh,
no one's
it's
going to go, like I'm not going over to the garage and like looking over there like somebody
Calling
breaking an
911.
entry.
Yeah, you're like,
Hey,
turn
what are you
that
doing
damn
over
thing
there?
off.
I know, it pisses us off
Jeez.
actually. We're just like, shut it off. The guy like breaking is like, I'm almost there. I got it.
I'll be done in a second. Wait, so all right, I'm just gonna. I think we should just recap our three real quick because we've been speaking for so long. If anybody like just came in,
Yes, we
um,
may have to make a
I
full
would,
list on our
It's
webpage
only been an
too.
hour 50
yeah,
minutes, guys.
And I don't think this car
I
alarm's
will.
going to stop outside. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna say Atropia number three, Twinless number two, Andre's an idiot number one.
Lurker number 3. If I had legs, I'd kick you. Number 2, and Ugly Stepsister number 1.
all right, Virgin of the Quarry Lake, number 3. A watch that Steve needs to do. Next
I
up, Love
do. I
Brooklyn.
do.
And then One is Seeds.
All right, number 3 for me is I almost already forgot it. No, just kidding. It's Love
Could be the
Brooklyn.
car alarm.
Uh, Number 2 is Mad Bills to Pay, or for our Spanish speakers out there, Destiny Dile que no son malo. They put it in everything, so I can't even drop it. And then number 1 is 2,000 meters in a Drivka, and the honorable mention was Obex. And I want to also say, Legend of Ochi, I think, deserves a bit more respect than it's getting from critics.
Oh, yeah, my other honorable mention, I forgot. Suck One Island, also very good. I didn't give that love.
Ooh, that was supposed to be for Steve.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, you should. I mean, it's not really a horror, Steve, but it's actually really
No.
good. It's based on a true story, which I was shocked about after watching it. I was like, wait a second, this is a real story. And it has a really interesting twist in the end.
Yeah.
Really sad,
No,
though. I was like,
I think I
oh,
would like
my
it.
heart.
I mean, Lurker wasn't a horror movie. I loved Lurker, so there you go.
Yeah, you should definitely watch Suck One Island if you have a chance. It's a good one.
I will.
Well,
Wait,
looks like they robbed the car. It's
I
gone.
forgot to mention. I forgot to mention. Oh yeah, thank God. I forgot to mention one that we actually got to hang out with the DP, the honorable mention for Plainclothes. Yeah. So Plainclothes was actually pretty good too. I mean, I wouldn't put it in the top three, but it's a great film. I hope that gets distributed somewhere and so people can watch it. I thought, because I've heard the terminology plain clothes, so I just assumed, okay, that's a cop in plain clothes. He's probably going to get involved in the mob or, something like that or something, and it's like totally different than what I thought it was going to be. So, but it was very good. And we actually got to hang out with the DP for a little bit over some wine, I think, or whatever they were serving over there and beer. And that was actually cool. And we also did the press line and they were all really, really, cool, kind people. So I want to give a shout out to the Plainclothes.
Oh, and Karlo
Cast and
probably
crew.
100% would have put Third Act as his number 1. I don't know what his 2 or 3 would have been, but I know Third Act definitely would have probably been.
Maybe I think he did Sorry Baby also. So Sorry Baby I think is his number 2, followed by Move Your Body.
Oh, The Birth of
I
House.
think.
Move your
Yeah, The Birth
body.
of House.
That one?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, shout out to Karlo for even getting films in because he's too busy now with all the acting things he has to do.
Can I tell you guys what probably my most disappointing film of the festival was?
Yes, let it rip.
All right, so when I say it's not a bad, I think I actually only saw one like bad film, like legitimately bad film, out of the 19 that I watched. Maybe borderline two, but I mean, I saw one. It wasn't like disappointing because I had no hopes for it even in the beginning. But there's a movie called Touch Me that's part of the midnight category of films, which I also call the bad
It was a
movies.
Steve film.
And and Touch Me was just whatever. That's not a disappointment. It was just bad, but disappointing. I have to say the movie Rebuilding, because that was one of those that like all the critics thought that they were supposed to like, so they all kept saying that they liked it. And I was like, okay, well, it sounds like it's going to be a good movie, And then I actually got in to see it, and man, I am so done with like slice of life like that terminology, because not every life is super interesting. And and the
Yeah.
thing is, like, I understand slow burn movies, right? But like, if it doesn't pay off in the end, like if there isn't like a big payoff for that slow burn, then it's just a slow movie, you know? And
Wrong
rebuilding is
term for this
super,
film. I don't know, Afram.
yeah,
Maybe we'll call it something else.
it, it's called rebuilding, and literally they start rebuilding in the last like 5 minutes of the movie. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, like I'm just tired of these movies. It's like, hey, look at how much like these people's lives suck, right? Don't they suck? And that's the movie. And I'm like, well, yeah, people go through bad stuff. I understand, but like, if there's no like plot progression or like redemption or something like that, like, then okay, that's just a series of bad things that happen to somebody. That's not a story to me. That's like, that sounds more like a documentary than a story, or
Like
like
a
a feature
vlog.
film, you know? So
Yeah, it does
yeah,
kind of
like a
sound
vlog.
documentary-ish.
So yeah,
Avram, you
I
gave
would say
Manchester by the Sea a 9.8, didn't you? So
I never saw that film. Okay, so do not spread rumors and accusations.
That
I
film
didn't. I
bores
definitely
me.
did not see that film.
That
Hmm.
bores
But
me.
yeah, I was not a fan of rebuilding. Like, it's not a bad movie. It's just really slow, but it doesn't really go anywhere, you know. And maybe my most misunderstood movie for me was Omaha, because that seemed to be one that like everyone loved, and I did not love it like everyone else did. And so maybe I was just like in a bad mood, or I just feeling it at the moment. I don't think so. I think I was kind of right. But on top of that, like, I have seen a film, like for example, Nomadland, right? Like the first time I saw that film, I mean, I was falling asleep. I thought it was so boring. I didn't get the point. Then when I saw it, maybe a year or two later, no, maybe could have been 3 years later, when I was doing the articles last year for the best pictures, and I rewatched it, it's still like just an okay movie to me, but it was much better than the first time I saw it, in which I thought it was like a terrible movie. So it went from like terrible to like, okay, I get it. It didn't go from terrible to awesome, but so maybe if I watch Omaha again, I might like it more. But it was another one of those like super slow burn movies that I don't know. I don't know. I'm A movie can be slow and good. Look at Train Dreams. That's how you do it. But I don't know. I wasn't feeling either of those movies.
Mine's Sugar Babies. Sugar baby without the sugar.
that was pretty
Sorry,
bad.
just baby. She would like the main character it revolves around discloses that she is a sugar baby without the sugar. And it follows around this girl, and she basically loses her college scholarship because she breaks up with her boyfriend and has a hard time going to school, misses her family, so she ends up giving up that scholarship, goes to another school that's closer to where she lives, and she now has to find a way to make enough money to pay for her tuition. And somebody who like received a college scholarship, like no, I can't. I don't feel sorry for somebody who has been given an opportunity and just throws it away, because I feel like somebody else could have utilized that money and
Yeah.
actually cared to go to college, and you kind of took that from them. And basically, it goes from this storyline, which is kind of broad and all over the place. It talks about how the minimum wage in Louisiana is like super low and hasn't been changed over time. But then it dives into her structuring this new company of like mentorship for other wannabe sugar babies without the sugar, where basically they're just flirting with men and sending photos to make money. And you would think in the end something would come of it, but she actually ends up worse off than she did in the start, where she had more ambitions to move to a bigger city. And instead, it's kind of like, I only want to live with people I know in an environment that I know, because people aren't accepting of me and the way that I talk and the way that I act. So this is like where I want to be. But they also don't decipher directly like how much she's making, and like I don't understand where all the money went, because it doesn't seem like she's living this luxurious life. So I'm just like, how did you spend all this money? Like, you're saying that you're making X amount, but like you're still super poor. Like I'm lost here.
You
That was
sound like
probably my
Lester.
Um, Wait,
I would like to follow the money, yes, and see. I wanted the receipts, and they didn't show me the receipts, so I was upset with that.
so sorry. I was looking over the list of the movies I watched again, and there's 19 of them, so I kind of like sometimes some of them get lost. I would say another disappointing one, which it wasn't a bad movie, but I just thought it was going to be a little bit better. Was Jimpa, the one with John Lithgow. He has a non-binary. He refers to them. Sorry, it's hard to do this as a grand thing because there's no gender there, and I don't know, that movie was just like it had potential, but then it was like a little too long. It kind of started going all over the place. That was a little disappointing. But then I forgot my probably actual tied for worst, or if not worse. Like I guess I expelled it from my brain because I didn't want to think about it anymore. Was Bubble and Squeak. Like, my lord, what a like hey kids, here's this not funny joke. Okay, we hope you laughed at it the first time because you're going to be seeing a lot more of it for the next 90 minutes. Like, it's literally the same joke, like, over and over and over and over again, and it never gets to that point where, like, sometimes Family Guy would do something like that, where after a while it starts to get absurd, and then the absurdity of the joke going on that long starts to make you laugh a little bit. So it kind of eventually like chips you down until you eventually like just start laughing. This one was like, oh my God, I don't have a watch, and I kept checking my wrist because I was like, I have to get out of this freaking theater, man. Like, this is not a funny movie. I don't know why anybody thought this would be funny. Again, I also wasn't a huge fan of something like Napoleon Dynamite, for example, but that wasn't really my type of comedy. But this, I don't know I don't think this is anybody's type of comedy.
Did you ever see The Aristocrats?
No. I mean, I know of the joke. I don't know if it's based on the
telling
joke.
of that joke through the
Right.
entire
Okay.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, actually, I think I did actually. It's a documentary, right? Where they're just going through the different.
This is a joke for comedians, and it's all about the joke is not funny, but it's all in the telling of the joke. And yeah, it was one of those things where I thought, how am I going to watch a movie where they just tell the same joke over and over? But it was actually pretty entertaining.
Yeah, that one's actually entertaining. Yeah, because it's like the joke is the same, but the people like interpreting the joke are doing. Yeah, they're doing it totally differently. So it's interesting because you're like figuring out like how many different ways can one thing be.
But it's also an inside thing amongst comedians. They all know this joke. It's like sort of like the Wilhelm scream for comedians.
Oh yeah.
Like they all know. They all have a version of this joke. They all know it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Was John Lithgow better in Jinpa than he was in, say, Conclave?
Oh. See, and it's funny because Conclave was actually probably the last film I saw John Lithgow in, and I liked it. So I was like, I mean, this guy doesn't pick like bad movies, you know what I mean? And
he's
again,
Dumbledore soon,
listen, Jimpa wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good as I thought it would be because I guess I overestimated the quality of films that John Lithgow picks. But one thing about the film is that be prepared. You have not seen John Lithgow like this ever. And when I say that, I mean you literally see him totally naked, twice.
I was like, wait, like we're seeing something? Like, what do you mean we're seeing?
Yeah, no, it's
like,
the third rock from the sun.
At some point in your career, you have to be totally.
Well, that's a different rock we haven't explored before with him, have we?
Yeah, it rhymes with rock, but yeah, it was weird to see him. I mean, I've never seen him. I mean, I'm not going to say I've seen every single John Lithgow movie in his like filmography, but I've never seen him naked. It wasn't something I planned on ever seeing in my life. And then I also never saw him portray a gay character. So watching him kind of like make out with men and then just walk around totally nude, it was very like kind of the opposite of Conclave.
Hey, he's the perfect pick for Dumbledore.
But
I can see him as Dumbledore, though. That's an easy transition.
But
Put a little extra hair on him.
I think that this is probably going to be the last thing I talk about in this whole stream, but the reason why I think Bubble and Squeak actually might be the worst movie under Touch Me is because I feel like Bubble and Squeak actually had like established, talent behind the film, and there are actually like good actors in the film, and then this is like what they decided to put out. You know what I mean? Like the output does not match the
It's
talent. You know
disappointing.
what I mean? And it's like it's super disappointing in terms of just like who made the film, but then it's disappointing and it's bad, like really, really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean it's like when I was trying to assess a final score for Captain America: Brave New World, and it was not
Oh
good.
boy.
The review is up. I actually had to give it a higher score than Love Hurts, the Ke Huy Quan action movie, just because of who was attached. It's like you had two Oscar winners, and you have a producing
Harrison
team
Ford.
that did Nobody, John Wick, and Violent Night, and you're telling me you can't even put good action sequences together? I mean, like, there's no excuse, like none.
Yeah.
But anyway, my worst movie was Coexistence My Ass.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Well, actually, we
It
did. Yeah,
It
we
was
is
didn't get
not
to talk
funny at
about that
all.
one.
She's supposed to be a comedian, and the fact
She's
that it
yeah,
wasn't
a
funny at all is
comedian.
even worse.
So she's a comedian, like she's like an Israeli-born comedian whose mom is Iranian. And if you know anything about conflict in the Middle East, you're already like, wow, it's a bit of an oxymoron. But she grows up in this coexistent, friendly, peaceful place out in the Middle East, and she gets invited to Harvard to, you know, participate in some program after she was working at the United Nations, and she thinks that comedy is a way to bring people together. The problem with this movie is that it wasn't funny at all. And
Ugh.
the first 80%, well, the first like 70% of it is just kind of following her around because she has like a stand-up comedy tour also called Coexistence My Ass. But then the events of kind of October 7 happen, and it turns everything just like upside down. So it goes from like a movie that is trying to be funny, that's not funny at all, to then a movie that is clearly one-sided in debate. It's like so one-sided, it's so loud in one direction that you can't think properly about what is actually going on, because it's almost like a switch just gets flipped and you're just like, what am I watching?
Mm.
So I don't know how that won the jury award for freedom of expression, but I think that's kind of one of those awards that just kind of gets padded.
Like when I think of
Wait,
an award like that, I think of
Good
The
job.
Seat of the Sacred Fig. Like that is a film that should like win
That's
an
a good
award like
movie.
that. Like it is illegal to be filming where they're filming, and they could like literally be thrown into jail for the
Yeah.
rest of their lives, but they're doing it anyways. Like to me, I'm like, this is like somebody fighting for their freedom to like get a message out. But this one, I'm just like, I don't know.
It's a big miss. You can save
Oh wait.
100 minutes of your life.
So I just pulled up on the Sundance.org website because remember we were talking about the films that won the different awards. Like there's a jury award and then there's like
Mhm.
the audience awards. So the
Mhm.
grand jury went to Atropia for the U.S. dramatic competition, Seeds for the
Sees one
U.S.
for
documentary,
documentary.
yeah, for documentary, Sabar Banda for the World Cinematic Dramatic Competition, and Cutting Through
Yeah, that's one
Rocks.
we missed.
Oh, Cutting
Yeah,
Through
it was
Rocks.
the
I didn't talk
world's.
about that. I watched that. That one was actually really good. And again, Cutting Through Rocks actually should have won the award that Coexistence My Ass won. Because this is like a woman basically in Iran. Actually, I think she was the first political woman to ever win a council position in her small village. And it gets so bad that they basically try and take her to court and say that she potentially needs to do a sex change because she's going against their religious beliefs. So she has to go to court to prove that she's actually a woman. And if the jury decides, like, no, like, you're not perceived as a woman, like, they will force her to get a sex change. It's crazy. I was just like, wait, what?
I met her. I met the director of that film and the producer there in the lounge area, and it was real fascinating.
Of course you
talking
did,
to
Steve.
them
Where were
about
you?
that. but that took her a long time to make that movie. It was like 6 years in the making, and it was one
Yeah.
of these things where it couldn't be shown in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
She's working on it
I
now to
think
like
the
try to get
main
it
woman,
done.
Sarah, they couldn't even get her to Sundance, like because of
Yeah.
visa issues and things like that. Like I don't think she actually was there.
And so this is like real risk taking in filmmaking here. This is an
Yeah.
example of that.
That
Like, not
woman
a
could
comedian
completely
going
lose
to
her
Harvard.
life.
Yeah, and,
Steve.
Marissa mentioned seat of this. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, Steve. What do you think about this? You know how there's the category called Next in all capital
Mhm.
letters. So the Next Innovator Award, this is under the jury, presented by Adobe, was given to Zodiac Killer Project.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
If I was going to say, if we're going to do disappointing films, that was one that it had nothing to do with the Zodiac Killer. It was like a sour grapes movie. It was like this guy wanted to make a documentary based on this book about the Zodiac Killer and had it all planned out and everything. And then for whatever reason, it was kind of unclear at the last minute, the rights to the book, he lost the rights to the book. So as sort of like a grumpy thing to do, he decided I'm just going to make a documentary but not mention the book. And so there's all these static shots of like, so this building here is where we would have shot the police station here in Vallejo, but we couldn't get the rights to doing that from the book or whatever. And so it just kind of overstayed its welcome in that it actually got kind of boring.
Sorry, Alfred, you were going to say something before I cut you off?
Oh no, just kind of a touch point on what Steve was saying about real risk taking in filmmaking. And Marissa mentioned Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is nominated this year as best foreign film from Germany. So that was actually shot in Tehran, and they didn't tell anyone that they were actually shooting the movie.
Wow.
And they had to
Secrecy.
smuggle the footage out to Europe for an editor to actually work on the film. And like I think the main talent in that movie, they couldn't get them out of Iran, and
Everyone
they,
escaped except for the main, like the two, the actor and the actress. I think the main two.
yeah, and they were trying to pressure the cast to tell them not to release the film, as if that was going to do anything, right? But like there was real danger there, and it's like you watch some of these things, like the more dangerous stuff, it really comes across. Like that. You look at 2,000 meters Dendrivka, same
Yeah.
thing. It's like you could really lose your life here, and
Oh, yeah.
it's like fascinating to
Well,
watch.
even
Awesome
Cutting Through
to do
Rocks,
that.
I read somewhere that the director and the co-producer actually had to get married in order for the villagers to accept
crazy.
them and make it so that it was okay, so that they could actually shoot the film. So the things that like these individuals are going
And
through
the
just to
film
get the
also
film.
is, I guess it's the radical act of the movie was her teaching girls how to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, so basically, Sarah, her father raised her like he would have raised a son. And so he taught her from an early age how to do construction work. So the film starts out, and why they came up with the name Cutting, I think, Through Rocks is because she's fixing a gate and she's literally using a saw to cut through stone. And so it's showing this woman who's doing tasks that typically a man might do. And, it kind of goes back to her upbringing of how her father kind of just let her dress however she wanted, taught her how to ride a motorcycle. And so she just has been given a different lifestyle than most of the women who they start out with like a classroom full of women who she's trying to talk to about, how many of you want to stay in school? Because a lot of the girls end up getting married at age 11, having kids at 11 through these arranged marriages, and she's trying to get them to sign this form that says I will not get married until like I'm much older. And then at the end of the film, it's like maybe 5 of the girls out of the 30 that signed this have already been married off, which is like crazy. And these women don't have like any way to speak up to their family. Like they're basically forced into these marriages that they don't want. And she tries to alleviate these pressures by teaching them how to ride motorcycles. But like in some of the scenes, they get caught by their family and they get beat. So these poor women, as much as they want to kind of go outside of the boundaries of like what's accepted in their village, like a lot of them are afraid because they'll be punished for it.
Those are the kind of movies that remind us like how good we actually have it here.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
sometimes
100%.
you got to see something like that to be like, oh my God, that kind of stuff still happens elsewhere. So kiss the ground.
Oh yeah, well, and one of the main points that Sarah tries to make as she gets voted in as this councilwoman is she brings gas to each home. But in order to get the line connected to the gas pipes, she forces that household to make sure the wife is also part owner of the home. And these men are like, no, like my wife's not gonna be put on the house. And she's like, well, what happens if you die? She's not going to get the land or the home. And the men are like, well, no, I'm sorry. Like, I'm the man of the house. This woman doesn't deserve half of what I have. And it's just like so crazy to think of that mindset.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm just gonna finish those are the jury awards I mentioned. Now the audience awards. Twinless won the U.S. Dramatic Competition. Andre's an Idiot won the U.S. Documentary Competition.
There you go.
Uh, DJ Ahmet, which I actually did see, won World Cinema Dramatic Competition. It was all right. Prime Minister won the World Cinema Documentary Competition. Did anybody see Prime Minister?
Ray saw it, but he hasn't done a review on
Yeah.
it yet. So
And then East of Wall won the audience award for the next program. I saw East of Wall. It's another slice of life movie, but it's done a lot better. It's like a weird hybrid of documentary and like, you know, feature, fictional feature film,
Mhm.
It's based on a woman who's actually like a legit person, but it's sort of like Nomadland in that way, where all the
Oh, yeah.
nomads are actually real nomads, but there's like this
Mm-hmm.
fictional character who's kind of living amongst them. It's sort of this weird blurred lines documentary, not documentary kind of film. East of Wall is actually pretty good, but those are all the awards.
hmm.
So
We did it.
We did
we,
it, guys. That's our Sundance recap. We're just
Sundance. As
missing
we
a few
still
of our
wait for everyone's
counterparts.
reviews to come in,
Yeah, we
they're
are not
slow.
finished with our
slowly
editorial
but surely.
pieces yet.
Actually, Afrim, you mentioned you had 19, and I guess I didn't have one on the list, but that's pretty impressive. That means we probably covered 65
No,
movies.
no, well, you know what it was? I saw 19, but one was a double because Steve saw Dead Lover also.
All right.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
it's 18 reviews, but
It's
19
18
Well, you
films that I
reviews.
still can
actually
write on
watched.
it because your perspectives are
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah, him and I could probably literally watch that film again and like just talk for about this
I
long,
would
about
like
two
to,
hours
yes.
on how he feels
Yeah.
versus how I feel.
Well, I
I don't
I
know.
would
can't wait
probably
until
pause
the
that.
I can't wait
I
till
was
the
gonna say
Oscars
I would
prediction stream.
oh yeah, that should be a pretty good one. But like I swear, if I was at home watching Dead Lover with Steve, Steve would be like my wife, right? And I would just be like pausing every 2 seconds. Now you see, this is why I hate this part because this, that, and that, and that. He's like, can we just watch the damn movie, please?
Uh,
Oh, that's too good. All
All
right,
right.
guys. Well, great recap. I feel like we have a good list. We'll have to like put a formalized list together, I think, of maybe like our top 10 picks for
mhm.
Sundance 2025 as we get geared up for what South by is next. So stay tuned, everyone. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe down below. Give this video a like. If you were at Sundance as well, let us know in the comments what were some of your top picks. Let us know if you disagree with our picks too. We love to battle it out. But good to have everyone on board once again. This is a great crew, except for poor Steve coming down with the cold, the Sundance flu. But you won't get it next year, Steve. You're
It
prepared.
was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth it. All right, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you all later.